my book is The B. Harley Bradley House, Frank Lloyd Wright's Flagship, Prairie design. I wanted to write a book about the Bradley House because I felt I knew enough about it, not that anybody knows all of the things that there are to know. And I also say in my book that history is fluid and that hopefully it will continue to grow with future generations and their interest in a particular topic. My interest in the Bradley House started when I was 6 years old, and my family moved into the 600 block of South Indiana Avenue, just a stone's throw, because it dead ends at the river, from the B. Harley Bradley House that dead ends at the river the next block over. I don't think I ever told my parents how much time I spent at the Bradley House, but I did spend a lot of time over there because my best girlfriend, Wendy, lived on the other side of the Hickox house. And so there was a draw for me to go into her neighborhood, and the draw for her to come over to mine was, of course, Mrs. Yaneke's A&W root beer stand. And my proximity and friendship with the people that lived at the end of my block, so that we could always go out on their pier and we could, you know, drown a worm at the end of a pole, which is really all we ever did. We played at the Bradley House lawn because it was the largest continuous lawn in our neighborhood. And the restaurateurs at the time didn't mind, and they learned our names, which was, you know, good and bad. But we followed the rules. We didn't make a lot of noise when we were there. We did do a lot of treasure hunting there. I don't know what kind of treasures we thought we would find, but nonetheless, we dug little holes all over the ground there. And we even buried some treasure there as well, because treasure hunting was sort of our thing. And we would make little notes and hide it in the tree and under a rock, and you know, one clue would lead to the next, and you would have to travel those and hopefully find your buried treasure. The buried treasure was always on the Bradley House lawn. That was usually the end place, and then we would do, you know, tumbling on the lawn, and then we would visit the gift shop, which had a children's section. And we would purchase little things for a penny, a nickel, and a dime, like the little finger things that allowed you never to get your fingers back without disjointing them, and little plastic lips and things like that. We also visited the travel section because during the time that Marvin Hammock and Ray Schimmel were the restaurateurs at the Yesteryear Inn, they ran a travel agency, and they took trips around the world to different points of interest. And so we would spend as much time as they would let us looking through brochures and some of the pictures they had up and things in the travel agency too. So it just gave us a bigger view of the world, I think, to have the Bradley House in our neighborhood. The only time I ever got to eat there, being 6 years old in 1960 when we moved there, from Bourbonnais I might add, but it was called Brevard Road back then, not Armour Road as it is today. And the house that I lived in, a beautiful little brown ranch with a split rail fence around it and 2 acres of corn to the rear of our property, is now parking lot for Kroger. So that's a sad, you know, ruination, I guess, of a precious little home that I have a lot of good memories from. So, yes, I have my own walking tour. But anyway, I just enjoyed living in that area so much, and growing up in the 1960s and 70s, knowing the restaurateurs, and I guess the stories that my dad would bring home. He was a letter carrier, and he carried every route in Kankakee, I'm pretty sure, over his 40 years, but he really loved the neighborhood of the Riverview District. And he would come home with stories, you know, and sometimes they were silly little stories, but I remembered many of them. Sometimes it was holding a ladder for a neighbor that was trying to get something out of the gutter, or, you know, holding the other end of a long board that was on a couple of, what do you call those things? Sawhorses, thank you. And just things like that, you know, somebody that he met, somebody that hadn't collected their mail in quite a while, so he looked in the front door glass and saw them laying on the floor. You know, unfortunate things happened there too. But he would bring these stories home to us, and you know, he always said nice things about the restaurateurs, and I came to know them, as I mentioned before. I wanted to write this book because a book solely about the Bradley House didn't exist to my knowledge. Jack Placey wrote a fabulous booklet for us at the Bradley House. It's concise, it's real, it's great. I wanted to add some more things to a book. I have artwork, and I would have done a PowerPoint, but I didn't know I could, because I have one. But there are about 25 pieces of original artwork that illustrate the text in various places throughout the book, and beautiful artwork of all different kinds. I knew many of the artists personally, most of them in fact, I think, because they had participated in art shows at the B. Harley Bradley House over the 13 years that it's now been open. I was a teacher at BBCHS for 35 years, and as soon as I retired in 2009, I knew I wanted to volunteer somewhere. I didn't know where, and I didn't know doing what, but that was always on my radar. I wanted to volunteer. So the first year I retired, I had torn my rotator cuff and my bicep tendon, so I was in 2 surgeries and 12 months of rehab. So I couldn't do anything in 2009. But in 2010, when I heard that the house was opening as a museum, I raced over there. I think I called first, but I ran into Mardine, who's become a great friend, and I said, I want to volunteer if you need volunteers. And she said, what can you do? And I had dragged a girlfriend of mine from BBCHS along, who was a history teacher. And I thought, she's retiring the year after me. This is going to be right up her alley. And I never could get her to volunteer there. I don't know why. They own farmland in Mantino, so I guess she's always been busy helping her husband farm. But at any rate, I didn't know how to answer Mardine's question when she said, what can you do? And my friend, Joanne, piped up, she can talk. And she said, well, I guess you want to be a volunteer docent then. And I said, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Wherever you need me, that's where I'll go. And so really for 13 years, that's pretty much what I've done. I started out as a tour guide, loved it, and I still do that. From that went on to managing the gift shop, doing all the buying, and keeping track of all of that stuff, and just about every other thing. I think I was a key holder first, and then the volunteer liaison and operations manager, and so on and so forth. And I wanted to write this book. I knew I could get beautiful artwork for it. There are 330 photographs in the book. Many of them are in what I would call a 9-patch. And to me, a 9-patch is just like a tic-tac-toe board filled with photos. And so usually the previous page to the 9 patches talks about the elements of whatever this 9-patch is going to be, and this one is stable architectural elements. And so the previous page tells about them, and then you get to see them. And if you don't know what you're looking at, there's a key in the back of the book that you can refer yourself to, because I think I've done about 6 or 7 of these throughout the book. They're all different and in different places, but as far as original artwork is concerned, there are watercolors, there are oil paintings, there are renditions of the house from different angles, but there are also some other really interesting and unique pieces of artwork that I guess I would say think outside the box. I highlight the history of every ownership, and there have been 11 of them over 123 years. And in that vein, there is also a chapter on the architecture of the house. And so everything in that chapter from the beginning of the book, and here you see another beautiful piece of artwork by Christina Lorraine, who has 2 pieces, Missy Carroll, that only has this 1 piece, but talk about innovation, right? And that's what I was talking about at the time in the text, about the innovative ideas that Wright had for the Bradley house. From details that appear in the next chapter, such as, and I know this is not a very large photograph, but this is the front of the house and the veranda. The idea that there are no right angles on the exterior of the house. It's a very difficult to discern design idea, but what it does with just 1 degree off, don't mind my crooked finger there, 1 degree off, an 89-degree angle, the house appears to be leaning in from every direction. And as such, it's wider at the base and narrower as it seems to grow from the earth, just like a tree trunk. It's wider at the base and narrower as it grows. Wright really wanted to consider all of his architecture as organic. He didn't call this a prairie style house. He called it organic architecture. All of his architecture takes something from nature, whether it's indigenous materials that he's building from, or other kinds of flora or fauna that he demonstrates in the art glass windows, perhaps, or in some other way in his house. This is a piece by Christina Lorraine that shows you the range of the types of artwork that are in the book. And this one actually shows one of the principles of Wright, which is to bring nature inside. Not just affecting the exterior of the house, but bringing it inside, blurring that line between the indoors and the outdoors. Christina Lorraine shows a deer inside the house at the vaulted doorways that are French doors leading out to the veranda. And they're twin verandas, or twin French doors like this on either side of the main living room. So she's blurred the line, she's put some foliage around this particular bit of architectural design and put the deer on the inside. It's genius like that, I think, that really helps to explain the book, the house's history rather, almost better than words could describe. Other elements actually helped to discover other facts about the B. Harley Bradley family. For example, the front loggia, or front entrance to the house, has very shallow stairs. They're only about 4.5 to 5 inches in height for the riser. And the width of the veranda is such that 2 people could walk up at one time. It was through an obituary. There are many legal documents that are photographs, census reports, and so on, marriage licenses and death certificate types of information as well. But this particular thing always stuck in my mind because I've visited many Wright houses, and I know that his stairs are always steep, number one, and number two, they have very narrow hallways. One, in fact, was so narrow, and I believe it was Kentuck Knob, which is only about 6 miles away from Falling Water, that had a 24-inch wide hall. And my husband is a big guy, and he looked at that before he even tried to turn sideways and decided he wasn't going to make it through there no matter which way he went. So he went the long way, and he didn't follow the rest of the tour on that. But this was unusual for Wright. He also designed an ergonomic doorknob, and I don't think they used the word ergonomic back then, but it's an octagon. It has 8 sides. Very easy to grasp, actually. If you have any arthritis or any disability in your hands, because your hand isn't going to slip around it like a round knob. The other fixtures in the house that, for instance, work at the French doors out to the veranda actually are levers, which are very ergonomically designed as well. The front door is massive. It is, I think, now I can't remember, I want to say something like 92 inches tall and 50 inches wide. Again, large enough for 2 people to go through at once. And so we find out in B. Harley Bradley's obituary that he actually suffered the after effects of infantile paralysis his entire life, which means he was disabled. We know that he, at the very least, used crutches or canes and probably was in leg braces. They carpeted the entire surface of the house, probably much to Frank Lloyd Wright's disdain, because there are beautiful white oak floors. Actually, I salute them for doing that, because we probably wouldn't have the original white oak floors throughout the house if they had not been covered by thick wool carpet and probably a deep horsehair pad underneath to supply a soft surface for B. Harley to fall upon. Should he, or when he did, because I'm pretty certain that they must have assumed that he was prone to falling. And another thing that deals with that same issue is Frank Lloyd Wright almost never put a master bedroom suite on the first floor of a house, ever. But he did in this house. I always thought it was so odd that his and his wife's bedroom was on the main floor, while his parents, who always lived with him, room was upstairs with their daughter, Margaret, who was about 6.5 when they moved into the house in 1900. I just never understood it. But knowing he had a disability made all of those pieces come together. And there were many things like that throughout my research. There certainly are wonderful tidbits of information in many different sources about the Bradleys, about their company, and other things, even about the piece of land that these houses, the Bradley house and the Hickox house, are built on. And also a kind of a revelation toward the end of the book, where we found out whatever happened to Margaret. We always wondered what happened to little Margaret, and we found her, and evidence of her, and a couple of marriages while she was living out in California and Oregon. and she's buried out there as well. So, give away a secret, but you have to read the rest to see if you can, you know, figure out how she got there. If you can figure out how she got there, I want to talk to you. Because I wasn't able to find out any connection as to how she ended up there. I think she was a very independent soul. There are a lot of mysteries that still are not solved through the writing of this book. One of the most interesting things I think about the book is that the house is telling its own story, an idea which came from Gaines Hall, the restorer of the house, and he wrote the foreword to the book rather, which really gives some very personal information that I was happy he was willing to share with the public, and as far as how they became connected to the house and what their time in the house was like. So, I don't know if I've used my time. I feel like I've talked that long. Are there any questions anybody would like to ask me?
Just kind of a weird question. Have you ever seen his house that's in Hampshire, Illinois? It's a farmhouse?
I have not. No, it's on my list of to-do, because I'd like to see all of the ones in Illinois.
It's interesting too, because those floors were heated.
Yes. This is the farmhouse, is it not? Yeah, yeah. I think, is it up in the Rockford area or even a little beyond that?
It's a
little before that? Southwest?
Just southeast of it, just
Southeast, yeah.
So the town is called Hampshire.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah. I'm aware of it. I know what it looks like because I've seen pictures of it.
It's very cool.
Yeah,
like
that's what I've heard. Yeah, very nice. Max?
Seeing you doing all the work over the years, I was really surprised when you mentioned the nails and bottles that I find in the lawn might have been yours.
I can assure you we never buried either of those things. But yeah, didn't you also find a spoon, or was that someone else? That might have been Raymond. Yeah. We have all of those artifacts in a box up in the archival area. So yeah, I was always digging around in the archives and looking at stories. Jack Clacy forwarded a lot of past news articles to us about Anna, her tea room. First it was here, then it was there. She was all over the place, wasn't she? So yeah, it was a very interesting book to write for sure. I've always loved the history of the house. Thank you.
Thank you very much.